The night was heavy with rain, the kind that blinds your eyes and drowns out your own heartbeat. In the middle of a lonely countryside road stood an ancient thorn tree, its branches twisted like claws reaching for the storm. Beneath it, a young woman was dragged forward by the man who once promised her love. Her name was Lily, 27, 6 months pregnant, still clinging to the dream of a family. But the man who held the rope in his hands, Ryan, was no longer the tender fiancé she had once trusted. His eyes were cold, his jaw tight, and his grip merciless. He pulled her closer to the tree, ignoring her desperate cries. "Please, Ryan, not here, not our baby," she begged, her hands shaking as she clutched her swollen belly. The rain mixed with tears on her face, but Ryan's heart had hardened. In the shadows stood another woman, Savannah, Ryan's lover. She smirked under her umbrella, watching like a spectator at a cruel play. To her, Lily was just an obstacle, a reminder of Ryan's past, and a burden that could destroy the future they planned together. Ryan threw the rope over a thick branch. His hands worked quickly, too quickly, like a man who had already rehearsed this evil act in his mind 100 times. The rough fibers cut into Lily's wrists as he tied her, and the thorn tree's sharp edges tore through her thin dress. Blood streaked down her side, staining the rainwater that pooled around her feet. Her voice cracked, filled with terror. "Ryan, I'm carrying your child. How can you do this to us?" For a moment he hesitated. A flash of doubt crossed his face, but Savannah's whisper cut through the storm. "Do it, Ryan. She'll ruin everything. End it now." His hesitation vanished. With one final pull, he tightened the knot around her neck and stepped back. The branch groaned under the weight as Lily's body was lifted, her toes scraping helplessly at the wet ground. The thorns dug deeper, her blood dripping onto the mud. The rain drowned her sobs, but her wide, pleading eyes begged for mercy that would never come from Ryan. She thought of her unborn child, of the little heartbeat she had heard at the clinic just weeks ago. She thought of the future she would never see. Darkness closed in as her vision blurred. Then, headlights. Bright, blinding, cutting through the storm. A sleek black car screeched to a halt just yards away. A tall man stepped out, his suit soaked instantly, his eyes locking on the horrifying scene. He didn't hesitate. In one swift motion, he pulled a utility knife from his pocket and ran toward the tree. The rope sliced under the blade, and Lily's body collapsed into his arms. Her breath was shallow, her blood warm against his hands. The stranger lifted her gently, shouting into the night for help. His voice was steady, commanding, the voice of a man used to saving more than just fortunes. But Ryan and Savannah were already fading into the shadows, slipping away with the storm. They thought they had escaped. What they didn't know was that the man who had just saved Lily wasn't just a passerby. He was a billionaire, and he had just witnessed everything. Lily Tran was only 27, but life had already demanded too much from her. She had left her hometown with nothing more than a suitcase, a nursing diploma, and a dream of starting a family in London. People described her as gentle, almost too gentle for the world she lived in. She worked long shifts as a community nurse, caring for the sick, the elderly, and the forgotten. Her smile was the kind of smile that could calm a frightened patient in seconds. But behind that smile was a secret pain. Her parents had passed away when she was young, leaving her without the safety net that most people relied on. She grew up fast, surviving on scholarships and part-time jobs. By the time she met Ryan, she was exhausted, longing for someone to share the weight of her lonely journey. Ryan appeared like an answer to her prayers. Handsome, charming, and ambitious, he promised her stability, love, and a future that felt almost too good to be true. He told her she deserved to be cherished, that he would never let her suffer again. For a woman who had spent years taking care of others, his words felt like sunlight breaking through a storm. When Lily discovered she was pregnant, her heart leapt with hope. She imagined tiny hands gripping her fingers, laughter filling a small apartment, and Ryan standing proudly beside her at the hospital. She thought it was the start of everything she had always wanted. But pregnancy also exposed the cracks in Ryan's mask. At first, it was small things. Controlling her phone calls, asking where she was every hour, insisting on holding the bank cards for safety. Lily told herself it was love in disguise, a man being protective. Then came the shouting, the cruel insults, the first slap that left her cheek burning for hours. He always apologized afterward, swearing it would never happen again. Still, she stayed, because she believed love was about forgiveness, because she believed her child deserved a family, because she believed Ryan could return to the man he once pretended to be. Every night she pressed her hand against her belly, whispering promises to the baby inside her. "You'll never be alone like I was. Mommy will protect you. We'll be okay." Those whispers were her only strength when Ryan's rage filled the room. The neighbors noticed the bruises. Her coworkers noticed the tired eyes. But Lily hid it all behind excuses. She didn't want pity. She didn't want shame. She wanted to believe that tomorrow would be different. The night Ryan tied the rope to that thorn tree was not the first time Lily feared for her life. But it was the first time she realized that love had turned into a weapon. Her trust had become her prison, and her silence had almost killed her. And yet, even in the darkest storm, fate sent her a stranger who cut through the rope, pulled her from death, and carried her into the possibility of a future she never dared to imagine. She thought she had lost everything that night. But what if it was only the beginning of a second chance? London was a city of opposites. In one corner, glass towers pierced the sky, glittering with power and wealth. In another, narrow streets whispered with secrets, where shadows clung to crumbling brick walls and misery hid behind closed doors. For Lily, London was both a dream and a nightmare. It was the place where she found love, and the place where that same love almost destroyed her. Her days had been filled with small apartments, crowded buses, and late-night shifts at the clinic. She carried her own grocery bags up 4 flights of stairs because Ryan never bothered to help. Their one-bedroom flat smelled of damp walls and stale smoke, yet Lily tried to make it a home. She placed tiny baby clothes in a drawer, painted one corner of the room soft yellow, and bought a second-hand crib she cleaned until it shined. She clung to hope in every detail, even as Ryan's anger stained the air. But just miles away, another world existed. A world Lily never thought she would enter. Gleaming penthouses overlooking the Thames, gated estates where silence felt expensive, hotel ballrooms filled with crystal chandeliers where men in tailored suits spoke in numbers and women wore diamonds like armor. That was Gabriel Whitmore's world. A billionaire who built empires from nothing, a man used to navigating boardrooms, not rescuing strangers from the jaws of death. And yet, fate had drawn his path across hers. After that stormy night beneath the thorn tree, Lily awoke in a private hospital suite, paid for in full by Gabriel. The difference was jarring. Instead of peeling paint and worn floors, she saw polished marble, soft lighting, and nurses who spoke to her with kindness instead of impatience. For the first time in months, she was treated like a person whose life mattered. Still, the storm outside had not ended. London's gray skies mirrored the turmoil in her heart. Ryan and Savannah roamed free, whispering lies and plotting escapes. The police were cautious, demanding evidence that Lily wasn't ready to relive. Neighbors gossiped in hushed tones, pitying her behind her back. Lily felt both safe and trapped. Sheltered in luxury, yet hunted by memories that refused to let go. The city became a battlefield. Every street carried the risk of seeing Ryan's face. Every phone call carried the threat of his voice. Even the quiet of night was broken by dreams of the rope tightening, the thorns tearing, the rain swallowing her screams. London was too full of ghosts. It was in this setting, between wealth and wounds, that Lily stood on the edge of 2 possible lives. One was a return to silence, where she would shrink into the background and let fear dictate her future. The other was a leap into an unfamiliar world, one where a stranger with too much power and too much kindness offered her a chance to rebuild. The city lights flickered outside her window, each one a reminder. London could crush you, or London could crown you. But Lily did not yet know that the battle between those 2 Londons would soon drag her across the ocean into a fight for justice larger than she ever imagined. Ryan Cole had once been the kind of man who could charm an entire room with nothing more than a smile. To Lily he had been safety, warmth, and the promise of a future. But the truth was far darker. Behind that polished exterior was a man drowning in debt, gambling away every paycheck, desperate for shortcuts to a life he could never build with his own hands. When Lily first told him she was pregnant, he played his role well. He kissed her forehead, promised to take care of her, and talked about painting the nursery blue or pink. But behind closed doors, the cracks appeared. He began to rage at small things: the cost of groceries, the sound of her phone buzzing, the way she looked at other men in the clinic. His jealousy wasn't love, it was control. And as the baby grew, so did his resentment. Then came Savannah. She was everything Lily wasn't: glamorous, daring, dripping with confidence. She walked into Ryan's life like a storm and whispered promises of quick money, lavish nights, and power. Unlike Lily, Savannah didn't ask for patience or sacrifice. She fed Ryan's hunger for more, but in return demanded his loyalty. She didn't want to share him with a pregnant fiancée or a child that would tie him down. Savannah's poison dripped into Ryan's ear night after night. "She's holding you back. Do you want to spend the rest of your life paying for diapers while I offer you diamonds? You have to choose, Ryan." And Ryan chose. Together, they became a dangerous pair. Savannah covered her cruelty with sweet words, but her eyes betrayed her venom. She smiled at Lily in public, even brought her gifts for the baby, while secretly plotting her downfall. Ryan, once the man who promised forever, now treated Lily like a burden chained to his leg. The plan to end it all had not been born in a single night of rage. It had been cultivated slowly, like a weed in the dark. Savannah pushed, Ryan obeyed, and both believed no one would ever find out. To them, Lily wasn't a person anymore. She was an obstacle, a problem to erase. What they underestimated was her strength, the kind of strength born from years of surviving loss. They also underestimated fate itself, which would place a billionaire's headlights on that very road at that very moment. But even after the rope was cut and Lily was saved, Ryan and Savannah didn't stop. They whispered new lies, created new schemes, and plotted from the shadows. They convinced themselves that Lily was weak, that she would never speak up, that the world would believe their version of events. They didn't know that their faces, their cruelty, their betrayal had already been seared into the memory of the man who saved her. And in the world he lived in, secrets never stayed hidden for long. Ryan and Savannah thought they had silenced Lily forever, but they had just declared war against someone far stronger than both of them combined. The first time Lily saw Ryan again after the night of the thorn tree was not in a courtroom, not in a police station. It was in public, under lights that exposed every wound. She had been persuaded by Gabriel's lawyer to attend a small charity dinner, a safe event where she could quietly observe and perhaps gather courage. She wore a simple dress borrowed from one of the foundation's staff, her hair tied back, trying to blend into the background. But fate had other plans. Ryan arrived at the same event, arm in arm with Savannah, both dressed like royalty. He wore a sharp suit, his arrogance polished back into place, as if he had never touched a rope in the rain. Savannah sparkled in a crimson gown, her laughter echoing across the hall like a knife scraping glass. To the crowd, they looked like a powerful couple, a vision of success. To Lily, they were the ghosts of a nightmare she was still fighting to survive. She froze when she saw them. Her breath caught, her heart hammered. Gabriel noticed immediately, his hand gently resting on the table near hers, a silent shield. But Ryan saw her too, and instead of shame, his face twisted into a cruel grin. He raised his glass in her direction, a mocking toast. Savannah leaned in close to whisper something in his ear, and then they both laughed, loud enough for Lily to hear. The humiliation seared through her. The very man who had tried to kill her now flaunted his mistress in front of her, acting as though she were nothing more than an inconvenience. Some guests began to whisper. A few recognized Lily from the whispers in the community, the pregnant woman who had vanished from her flat, the rumors of police involvement. But Ryan was quicker with his story. He strutted across the room, Savannah on his arm, and greeted Lily like an old friend. "Lily, you look alive. I mean, well," he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. The words hit harder than any slap. Her throat tightened, but she refused to cry. Savannah added her poison, her smile sharp. "Oh, Lily, I do hope you're recovering. Such fragile women shouldn't wander around alone at night, don't you think?" The guests chuckled nervously, unsure of what game they were witnessing. Lily felt the weight of their stares, the pity, the doubt. For a moment she wanted to run, to disappear. But then she felt Gabriel's presence beside her, steady, unflinching. His voice cut through the tension. "Mr. Cole," Gabriel said, his tone calm but firm, "perhaps you should choose your words more carefully in a room full of witnesses." Ryan's grin faltered, just slightly, but his pride forced him to hold it. He clinked his glass against Savannah's and walked away, leaving behind the echo of humiliation that clung to Lily's skin. She sat frozen, tears burning but refusing to fall. In that moment, she realized the battle wasn't only about survival, it was about dignity. Ryan wanted to crush her spirit in public, to make her doubt her worth. But he hadn't counted on the fact that humiliation could also spark fire. That night, Lily vowed that she would no longer be silent, because silence had almost killed her once before. The humiliation from the charity dinner clung to Lily like a second skin. No matter how many showers she took, she couldn't wash away the sting of Ryan's words or Savannah's mocking smile. That night, back in the quiet of her safe apartment, she finally broke. She sat on the edge of her bed, her hands covering her face, rocking back and forth as silent sobs shook her shoulders. The images replayed in her mind: Ryan's smug toast, Savannah's cruel whisper, the way the guests looked at her like she was fragile glass about to shatter. She whispered to herself over and over, "Why didn't I just disappear? Why didn't I die under that tree? Maybe that would have been easier." The guilt clawed at her chest. She had lost her child, the one innocent life that had given her purpose. She had nothing left to show for the pain she endured. No nursery, no family, only scars that no one could see. She pressed her hand to her stomach, still flat from the miscarriage, and the emptiness nearly suffocated her. In the bathroom, she stared at her reflection in the mirror. The woman who looked back at her was unrecognizable. Hollow eyes, trembling lips, a ghost of who she used to be. She whispered, "You're weak. You let him take everything." The words cut her deeper than Ryan's insults ever had. For hours, she sat in darkness, curtains drawn, phone turned off. She ignored Gabriel's calls, ignored the knocks on her door from the nurse who checked in daily. She didn't want comfort. She didn't want hope. Hope had betrayed her before. What she wanted, what she thought she deserved, was to sink into silence forever. But pain has a way of forcing truth into the open. At the lowest point of her despair, Lily crumpled to the floor, her body shaking. And there, with no one watching, she finally screamed. A scream so raw, so broken, it echoed against the walls and tore from the deepest part of her soul. It was the sound of years of loss, months of abuse, and the unbearable grief of losing her baby. When the scream faded into sobs, she lay on the floor, drained. For the first time, she admitted to herself, "I can't fight this alone." Later that evening, Gabriel returned, worried after she ignored him all day. He found her sitting in the dark, knees pulled to her chest. Without a word, he sat down beside her, not touching her, not pushing her, just being there. His silence was stronger than any speech. At last, Lily whispered, "I don't know who I am anymore. I don't know how to keep going." Her voice cracked like glass. Gabriel looked at her, his expression steady. "Then let me hold the weight until you can. You don't have to carry this alone." She wanted to argue, to push him away, but she was too tired. For the first time in months, she let someone's presence fill the void. And in that quiet moment, a faint flicker stirred deep inside her. She didn't know it yet, but this collapse was not the end. It was the breaking point that would force her to rise again. The collapse had nearly swallowed Lily whole, but from the ashes of her despair came something she never expected: truth. And truth, no matter how painful, had the power to change everything. It began with a knock on her apartment door. She hesitated, heart racing, but when she opened it, Gabriel's lawyer stood there holding a folder. His face was serious, his tone calm but heavy. "Lily, we've uncovered something about Ryan and Savannah. You need to see this." She sat at the table, hands trembling as she opened the folder. Inside were bank statements, contracts, and photographs. Each page told a story of betrayal deeper than she imagined. Ryan hadn't just been unfaithful. He had been funneling her savings, every penny she thought was for their future, into Savannah's accounts. Her baby's crib, the groceries, the rent, all of it had been paid with her sacrifices, only to be stolen and spent on Savannah's gowns, her champagne dinners, her weekend trips to Paris. Lily's stomach turned as she flipped through the evidence, but the most shocking piece wasn't financial. It was a document, notarized and signed, a life insurance policy Ryan had taken out on her just months earlier. The beneficiary? Savannah. Her breath caught. Her chest tightened. The rope, the thorn tree, the storm, it all made sense. Ryan hadn't acted in blind rage. It had been premeditated, cold, calculated. He hadn't just tried to silence her. He had tried to cash in on her death. Her hands shook as she whispered, "He planned to kill me. For money." Tears welled in her eyes, but this time they weren't from weakness. They were from fury. For the first time, anger burned hotter than grief. Gabriel's lawyer leaned forward. "Lily, you have more power than you think. With this evidence, the law is on your side. But it's not just about legal battles. It's about reclaiming your voice." Gabriel, who had been silent until then, finally spoke. His voice was steady, almost fierce. "Ryan wanted you erased. Savannah wanted you forgotten. But you're still here. That means you've already won the first battle. The rest is just finishing what they started." For hours, Lily stared at the documents. Every detail was another knife, but also another piece of armor. She wasn't just a victim anymore. She was the only one who could expose their lies. Late that night, she sat alone, the folder open before her. She pressed her hand against her stomach, remembering the child she had lost. Grief still clawed at her, but now it mingled with something sharper. "They stole my baby. They stole my trust. They will not steal my future," she whispered to the empty room. The next morning, she made a decision. She called the lawyer. Her voice no longer trembled. "I'm ready. Tell me what I have to do." The woman who once begged for mercy was gone. In her place stood someone who had nothing left to lose, and that made her more dangerous than Ryan and Savannah could ever imagine. The decision to fight was the first step. The transformation came next. For weeks, Lily had been the picture of fragility. Soft-voiced, hunched shoulders, hiding behind oversized sweaters as if to make herself invisible. But once she chose to reclaim her future, everything began to shift. Gabriel understood the importance of appearances in a world where perception was power. He arranged for Lily to meet with a stylist, not for vanity, but for armor. When she first walked into the boutique, she felt out of place among the rows of tailored suits and elegant gowns. She whispered, "I don't belong here." The stylist, an older woman with kind eyes, smiled gently. "My dear, every woman belongs in clothes that remind her of her strength. Let's find yours." For hours, they worked together. They chose fabrics that flowed but didn't hide her frame, colors that reflected resilience instead of sorrow. When Lily looked in the mirror afterward, she hardly recognized herself. Gone was the girl with hollow eyes and trembling lips. Staring back was a woman who had survived the storm. The changes weren't only external. Gabriel insisted she meet with a counselor specializing in trauma. At first, Lily resisted, talking about the rope, the thorns, the blood. It felt unbearable. But little by little, she found release in words. She cried in sessions, screamed, even sat in silence some days. But every time she walked out, the weight on her chest was lighter. Healing wasn't quick, but it was real. She also began training her voice. Gabriel introduced her to a speech coach, someone who worked with survivors learning to testify in court. Lily practiced speaking clearly, refusing to let her voice crack under pressure. The first time she read her own statement out loud, her hands trembled. But she finished it. By the fifth time, her voice carried like steel. Outside of therapy and preparation, Lily began building small pieces of normal life again. She started cooking meals instead of ordering takeout, reading bedtime stories to the child she had lost as if he could still hear her. At night, she wrote letters to her baby in a journal. Letters full of hope, anger, forgiveness, and love. It became her ritual, her way of remembering without being destroyed. One evening, Gabriel walked into the safe apartment and paused. Lily was standing by the window, hair styled, shoulders straight, wearing a navy dress that highlighted the fire in her eyes. She turned to him, holding the folder of evidence. "I'm not scared of them anymore," she said. "They should be scared of me." For a long moment, Gabriel just looked at her. Then he nodded. "Now you're ready." The transformation wasn't about becoming someone new. It was about reclaiming the woman she was always meant to be. Lily had been broken, humiliated, nearly erased. But now, piece by piece, she was rising. Not as Ryan's victim, not as Savannah's rival, but as her own person. The woman Ryan had tried to hang under a storm was gone. In her place stood a warrior, and soon the world would see her fight. The night of the gala arrived, and with it, Lily's chance to turn the tables. For too long, Ryan and Savannah had paraded through life as if their sins were invisible, their crimes untouchable. Tonight, that illusion would end. Gabriel's foundation had organized the event, a glittering evening under crystal chandeliers, with London's elite gathered to support women in need. To the guests, it was charity. To Lily, it was war. She stood backstage, her fingers brushing the edges of the folder that had once broken her. Now it was her weapon. Inside were the bank records, the forged contracts, and the life insurance policy that exposed Ryan's plan. Her speech was written, her voice trained. The stylist's gown shimmered under the lights, but what truly made her shine was the fire in her eyes. Out in the ballroom, Ryan and Savannah entered like royalty. He in a sharp tuxedo, she in a gown dripping with sequins. They smiled for photographers, whispered into ears, and toasted glasses of champagne. To the unknowing crowd, they were success and glamour. To Lily, they were predators dressed as angels. When the time came, the host stepped onto the stage. Tonight, we have a special testimony from a woman who has lived through the very violence we are here to end. The crowd grew silent, the lights dimmed, and Lily walked out. Gasps echoed through the room. Some recognized her instantly. Others simply felt the weight of her presence. She stood tall, gripping the microphone, her voice steady as she began. My name is Lily Tran. I was once a fiancée, once expecting a child, once filled with dreams of family. But love can be poisoned and trust can be twisted. The man I trusted most led me to a thorn tree on a stormy night and tried to erase me. Murmurs rippled across the room. Ryan's smile faltered. Savannah squeezed his arm, whispering urgently. But Lily continued, her words cutting through the silence. He didn't just betray me, he stole from me. He plotted my death for profit, and he thought no one would ever know. On cue, the screens around the ballroom flickered to life. Photographs of the contracts appeared. Bank records with Ryan's signature, the life insurance policy naming Savannah. And finally, a blurred dashcam video of the rope dangling in the rain. The audience erupted. Gasps, shouts, phones raised to record. Ryan leapt to his feet shouting, "Lies! All lies!" But the evidence glared back at him like an open wound. Lily didn't flinch. This is not just my story. It is the story of every woman silenced by fear. Tonight, I refuse silence. Tonight, I claim my dignity. Applause thundered through the hall. Some guests stood, clapping, shouting her name. Ryan's face drained of color, Savannah's eyes darting for an exit. But the walls had closed in. Police officers, already briefed, stepped forward through the crowd. As Ryan tried to push past, Lily's voice rang out one last time. You tried to bury me, Ryan, but you forgot I was a seed. And in that instant, the predator became prey, and the whole world witnessed his fall. The echoes of the gala still rang in Lily's ears long after the lights dimmed and the crowd dispersed. Ryan had been taken away in handcuffs, his arrogance stripped in front of the very people he once tried to impress. Savannah's mask had crumbled too, her desperate tears failing to erase the image of her greed splashed across every screen in the ballroom. Justice had finally begun its march. But for Lily, the story did not end with their downfall. The real ending, the one she had been waiting for her whole life, was about beginning again. In the weeks that followed, she focused not on revenge but on healing. Gabriel's foundation offered her resources, but it was Lily's own determination that carried her forward. She continued therapy, facing the scars that no one else could see. She wrote letters to her unborn child every night, not with grief anymore, but with gratitude. You saved me, she wrote in one. Because of you, I learned I was stronger than the darkness. Slowly, she built a new rhythm. She enrolled in classes, training to become an advocate for women like herself. She walked into shelters, not as a patient but as a mentor, telling survivors, you are not broken, you are not weak. You are still here, and that means you still have power. Every time she spoke those words, her voice grew firmer, and her heart grew lighter. Gabriel remained by her side, not as a savior, but as a partner. He admired her strength, never pushing her to move faster than she was ready. Their bond grew not out of pity, but out of respect. One evening, as the sun set over the New York skyline, he held her hand and said, Lily, you taught me that money builds walls, but courage breaks them. I don't want to just protect you. I want to walk this life with you. Her heart trembled, not with fear this time, but with hope. She accepted his proposal, not as a desperate woman clinging to rescue, but as a survivor choosing love on her own terms. Months later, she discovered she was pregnant again. This time with a man who celebrated every heartbeat, every flutter, every dream of the child they would welcome together. On the day she gave birth, Gabriel held her hand in the hospital room. As the cries of their newborn filled the air, tears streamed down Lily's face. She whispered to her baby, "You will never know fear the way I did. You will grow up in light, not in shadows." The world outside had not forgotten her story. News outlets replayed her testimony, and women across the globe wrote to her, thanking her for being brave enough to speak. She became a symbol, not of tragedy, but of triumph. And as for Ryan and Savannah, their fate was sealed. Convicted of fraud, attempted murder, and conspiracy, they faced years behind cold prison walls. The glamorous life they once flaunted was gone, replaced by silence and regret. Standing on a stage months later, holding her child, Lily delivered her final message. "They tried to bury me, but I grew roots." To every woman listening, never forget, you are stronger than the storm. And with those words, the chapter closed, not in sorrow, but in radiant victory. For a while, Lily believed the storm had finally passed. With Gabriel by her side and their newborn in her arms, life seemed to blossom again. The nightmares came less often, the tears fewer. Her days were filled with the sweet chaos of motherhood, the midnight feedings, the tiny socks scattered across the floor, the laughter that reminded her of why she had fought so hard to survive. But shadows have a way of lingering, even after justice seems served. One morning, as she strolled with her baby in Central Park, she noticed a man on a bench watching her too closely. He wore a hood pulled low, but when the wind lifted it for a brief second, her stomach dropped. The eyes. She knew those eyes. It was one of Ryan's old gambling associates, a man who had once threatened Ryan in front of her. He quickly turned away, but the message was clear. Her past wasn't finished with her. That evening, Gabriel received a call from his lawyer. Ryan is trying to appeal his sentence. He claims he was manipulated, that Savannah orchestrated everything. The lawyer sighed. It's desperate, but his connections in London are still whispering. We can't underestimate him. The news struck Lily like a cold blade. Ryan, behind bars, was still clawing for control. Even stripped of power, he managed to infect her peace. For the first time since the trial, she felt the old fear crawling up her spine. She hugged her baby tighter that night, whispering, "He will never touch you. Not ever." But fear wasn't the only shadow returning. Savannah, too, had begun to maneuver. Though she had received a lighter sentence for cooperating, her bitterness grew in silence. She blamed Lily for the collapse of her empire, her wealth, and her health. And though she no longer had diamonds on her fingers or servants at her call, she still had cunning. One afternoon, while Gabriel was away on business, Lily received a letter slipped under her door. The handwriting was sharp, almost carved into the paper. It read, "You may have won once, but the game isn't over. Enjoy your new life while it lasts." Her hands shook as she read it, but instead of tearing it apart, she placed it carefully into the folder with the rest of the evidence from her past. She knew better now. Fear would not silence her this time. Proof was her weapon, and she would gather every piece. When Gabriel returned, she showed him the note. His jaw tightened. "Then we'll be ready. Whatever they try, we'll meet it head-on." That night, as the city lights glowed outside their window, Lily sat by the crib watching her baby sleep. Shadows still circled her life, yes. But this time, she was not the trembling woman who once begged for mercy under a thorn tree. She had faced death and humiliation and walked back into the light. Ryan and Savannah thought they could haunt her forever. What they didn't realize was that Lily was no longer their prey. She was the storm they could never outrun. When Lily agreed to move permanently to America with Gabriel, she thought the Atlantic Ocean would act as a wall between her new life and the ghosts of her past. She wanted to believe that miles of water could drown Ryan's threats and Savannah's bitterness. In many ways, America did feel like a fresh chapter. New streets, new faces, and a sense of possibility she had never known before. But trouble has a way of crossing oceans, no matter how far you run. Life in New York started bright. Gabriel introduced Lily to circles of philanthropy, places where her story carried weight and sparked change. She spoke quietly at shelters, shared her testimony with survivors, and began planting seeds for the Rainlight Foundation, an organization she hoped would one day give women a safe path out of violence. Yet beneath the promise of this new beginning, unsettling reminders surfaced. A letter arrived at their Manhattan apartment, postmarked from London, the ink smudged by travel. Inside was a single line: "Oceans can't hide you." Gabriel pressed the letter flat against the table, his jaw set. "This is Ryan, or someone tied to him," he said. "But he's behind bars, which means Savannah still has her claws in play." Lily felt the tremor of fear creep into her chest, but she refused to let it dominate her. Instead, she placed the letter in her evidence folder, the same folder that had once exposed Ryan's crimes. Proof wasn't just protection, it was preparation. Days later, while attending a gala in Boston, Lily noticed a familiar figure at the edge of the crowd. A woman with fiery hair and sharp eyes, watching but not approaching. Savannah. Their gazes locked across the room, and though Savannah smiled politely, there was venom behind the curve of her lips. It was a warning. "I crossed the ocean too." That night, Gabriel's legal team confirmed it. Savannah had moved some of her business ventures to the States, slipping into the background of charities and companies where she could blend. Her presence wasn't coincidence, it was strategy. Lily stood in front of the mirror in her hotel room, staring at her reflection. The old version of herself, the trembling woman who begged under a tree, might have broken under this new wave of intimidation. But the woman in the mirror now was different. She had armor in her scars and fire in her heart. "I won't run again," she whispered. "If Savannah thinks she can haunt me here, she'll learn I am not the same woman she left bleeding in the rain." Gabriel came up behind her, resting a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "We'll face her together. Oceans don't protect monsters, Lily, but they also don't stop justice." And so, in the very country where Lily had hoped for peace, the next chapter of her battle began. This time, it wasn't about survival. It was about drawing the line once and for all. The Atlantic had carried more than Lily's hopes to America. It had carried her enemies, and soon their collision would shake both continents. For a brief time, Lily believed she could shield her new life in America from the storms of the past. Their Manhattan apartment became her sanctuary, a place filled with baby laughter, late-night lullabies, and Gabriel's steady presence. The walls echoed with love, not violence, and for once she could breathe without fear. But safety, she soon discovered, was fragile. One afternoon, while taking her baby for a walk in Central Park, Lily paused to adjust the stroller blanket. When she looked up, she froze. A woman she didn't recognize was standing a few feet away, staring too intently at her child. The woman smiled thinly before slipping into the crowd. Lily brushed it off as paranoia, but unease gnawed at her. That evening, a package arrived at their door with no return address. Inside was a single baby rattle, identical to the one she had lost during the night of the thorn tree. Her hands shook as she held it, memories flooding back like a tidal wave. A note was tucked beneath. "We remember. Do you?" Gabriel immediately called security. The building staff reviewed the cameras but saw only a blurred figure leaving the package at the lobby desk. Too vague to trace. Still, the message was clear. Someone had found their supposed safe haven. Lily's nights grew restless. She began waking at the slightest noise, rushing to her child's crib to ensure he was still breathing. She checked locks twice, sometimes 3 times, before lying down. The terror she thought she had buried clawed its way back, whispering that her enemies were closer than she dared to admit. One evening, while rocking her baby to sleep, she whispered, "I won't let them hurt you. I'll burn the world before I let them touch you." But even as she spoke the words, fear tightened around her like chains. Gabriel noticed the toll. "Lily," he said gently, taking her hand, "you are not alone in this. They want you afraid, but fear is their weapon, not yours. We will strengthen our defenses. We will fight smarter." True to his word, he increased security, installed new systems, and placed trusted guards near their home. But Lily knew no wall was unbreakable. What haunted her most wasn't just the threat. It was the knowledge that Savannah was ruthless, and Ryan's influence still reached beyond prison bars. The breaking point came one rainy night when a stone crashed through their living room window. Shards scattered across the floor. Wrapped around the stone was a note: "Your child will never know peace. Neither will you." Lily clutched her baby, her body trembling, but her eyes burned with something different this time. Anger. "They think I'm still the woman they left hanging," she told Gabriel through clenched teeth. "They're wrong. I won't let them win." The safe haven had been shattered, but in its ruins, Lily felt a dangerous resolve. This time, she would not just defend. She would strike back. Savannah Cole, or rather Savannah Blake before she attached Ryan's name to hers, had built her life on appearances. She knew how to glide through rooms with her head high, her lips painted in perfect red, her laughter timed like music. In London, she had played the role of the glamorous mistress. In New York, she reinvented herself as a businesswoman, weaving her way into charity boards and fashionable social circles. To the world, she was polished elegance. But behind closed doors, her empire was nothing more than smoke and mirrors. The truth was that Savannah was drowning. The fraud charges she narrowly escaped in London had followed her across the Atlantic, whispering in the ears of investors and sponsors. Her American ventures looked glossy on the surface: charities, consulting firms, luxury partnerships, but the finances underneath were crumbling. Lawsuits loomed, debts grew, and every time she saw Lily's name appear in the media as a survivor turned advocate, rage twisted her insides. She hated Lily. Not just for exposing Ryan, not just for surviving what should have killed her, but for becoming something Savannah could never be: respected, loved, believed. One evening, in her rented penthouse that still smelled of fresh paint and desperation, Savannah hurled a glass of wine against the wall. Her assistant froze. "Ma'am, are you—" "Get out," Savannah snapped, her composure shattering. Alone, she stared at her reflection in the dark window. For a moment, she didn't see the glamorous woman she had crafted. She saw cracks, lines of fear, a mask slipping. Her phone buzzed. It was a message from a blocked number. "She's not afraid anymore. Do something before she takes everything." Savannah's jaw tightened. She didn't know if it came from Ryan's allies or someone else in their decaying network. But the meaning was clear. If Lily's influence kept growing, Savannah's world would collapse. So she acted. She began planting rumors about Lily, whispering into journalists' ears that the survivor was exaggerating her story for sympathy, that she was exploiting Gabriel's wealth for attention. She hired private investigators to dig into Lily's past, hoping to unearth something, anything, to tarnish her credibility. But each attempt failed. Lily's past was marked by hardship, not scandal. Her story only made her stronger in the public eye. The more Savannah tried to control the narrative, the more it slipped away. At a charity brunch in Manhattan, she overheard two women whispering, "Savannah Blake? Isn't she the one connected to that scandal in London?" "Yes, I heard she nearly went to prison. Honestly, how is she still sitting on these boards?" The words sliced her like blades. For the first time, Savannah realized the mask she had worn for years was cracking in front of everyone. She wasn't admired anymore. She was doubted, pitied, even despised. That night, she sat alone, staring at her empty wine glass. The image of Lily, standing strong, holding her child, applauded by crowds, burned in her mind. Savannah whispered to herself, "If she destroys me, I'll take her down with me." Savannah's mask had cracked, and beneath it lay a woman with nothing left to lose. And that made her more dangerous than ever. After weeks of threats, broken windows, and sleepless nights, the storm seemed to quiet. Gabriel's security team doubled their patrols, and the police followed up on the evidence Lily had given them. For the first time in months, she could take her baby for a walk without her chest tightening in fear. The city streets looked different in the sunlight. For a moment, she dared to believe the nightmare was finally loosening its grip. Her days settled into a gentle rhythm. Morning feedings, stroller walks in Central Park, late-night talks with Gabriel over cups of tea. She began to laugh again, not the brittle kind that hides pain, but laughter that rang honest and light. Her son giggled back at her, tiny hands reaching for her face. Each sound reminded her that life still offered joy, that she was capable of happiness after all. One afternoon, while folding baby clothes, Lily caught her reflection in the mirror. She barely recognized herself, not because of exhaustion, but because of strength. The haunted woman who once hid behind shadows was fading. In her place stood a survivor, a mother, a woman who had fought death and come back stronger. She whispered to her reflection, "Maybe we're safe now." Gabriel shared her hope. "The threats have stopped," he said one evening, holding her hand across the dinner table. "The law is catching up with Savannah, and Ryan is losing his appeal. We're finally moving forward, Lily." His smile was steady, and she let herself believe him. But peace built on fragile ground is the easiest to shatter. Late one night, Lily woke to the sound of her baby crying. She rushed to the nursery and froze. The window was slightly open. The curtains swayed in the breeze. For a heartbeat, she couldn't breathe. Had someone been inside? She scooped her child into her arms, her heart racing, scanning the room for signs of intrusion. Nothing was missing. Nothing was broken. Just the open window, taunting her with silence. Gabriel checked the security cameras, but the footage was inconclusive. Only a shadowy figure passing the alley near their building. No forced entry, no clear evidence. Still, Lily's unease returned, heavier than before. The next morning, she found another package at their door. This one wasn't wrapped neatly. It was a torn cardboard box, inside of which lay a single thorn branch. Its sharp edges were still wet, as if freshly cut. No note this time, just the silent memory of the tree where she had almost died. Her hands shook as she dropped it to the floor. The message was unmistakable. "We're still here. We're watching." For days, Lily tried to push forward, but the calm she had embraced now felt like a cruel trick. She slept with lights on, checked the baby's crib every hour, and jumped at every sound. The laughter that had returned vanished again. She had believed the storm had passed, but in truth, it was only gathering strength, waiting for the perfect moment to strike again. The thorn branch had been the warning. The storm, Lily soon realized, was about to crash down in full force. It happened on a night when rain once again lashed against the city, echoing the nightmare she thought she had left behind in London. Gabriel was away at a business meeting in Boston, and though security guards patrolled the building, Lily couldn't shake the unease crawling through her skin. She placed her baby in the crib, double-checked the locks, and whispered, "Mommy's here, you're safe?" But safety proved to be an illusion. Near midnight, a sharp crack split the air, glass shattering. Lily's heart leapt. She ran to the living room to find the balcony door splintered, rain blowing inside. A masked figure climbed through, boots heavy on the floor. Panic surged. She grabbed the baby monitor, rushing back to the nursery. Another figure appeared in the hallway. Trapped. Her breath quickened, her body trembling, but instinct took over. She scooped her baby into her arms, clutching him to her chest. "Please," she whispered to the intruders, her voice shaking, "don't hurt my child." The taller figure spoke, his voice muffled but venomous. "We don't want the baby. We want you." Terror gripped her, but so did rage. She bolted into the bathroom, locking the door. With trembling fingers, she dialed Gabriel, whispering frantically, "Someone's in the apartment. Please, help me." His voice was urgent but calm. "Stay hidden, Lily. Security is on the way. Hold on." The intruders pounded on the door, each blow rattling the frame. Her baby cried louder, the sound slicing her heart. She pressed her forehead against his, whispering, "I won't let them take me. I promise you." Suddenly the pounding stopped. Silence. Too much silence. She held her breath. Then smoke began seeping under the door. The acrid smell burned her throat. Fire. They had lit something outside to flush her out. She coughed, clutching her child tighter. Desperation surged. With no other option, she smashed the bathroom window with a porcelain lid, shoving shards aside. Rain poured in, wind howled, but the fire behind her left no choice. She climbed onto the ledge, her baby pressed against her chest. Below, sirens wailed. Security guards shouted. A spotlight swept upward, catching her terrified figure against the storm. "Lily! Jump, we'll catch you." She hesitated, the city spinning beneath her. Fear screamed that she couldn't. But then she remembered the rope, the thorn tree, the night she had almost died. She had survived once. She could survive again. With a cry that tore from her soul, she leapt. Strong arms caught her. She collapsed to the ground, clutching her wailing baby. The masked figures fled into the storm, disappearing before police could catch them. Gabriel arrived moments later, drenched, pulling her into his arms. She sobbed against his chest, every muscle shaking. "They'll never stop. They'll keep coming until I'm gone." Gabriel's grip tightened, his voice fierce. "Then we'll stop them first." The storm had broken, but Lily was no longer just running. She was preparing for war. The attack on the apartment left Lily shaken but not broken. Police swarmed the building, journalists camped outside, and whispers spread quickly across New York's upper circles. Who would dare target Gabriel Whitmore's family? Everyone had theories, but Lily knew the truth. The shadows behind Ryan and Savannah were still reaching for her. Gabriel's legal team pushed for stronger charges. His security team tightened their grip. But no matter how many cameras or guards surrounded Lily, she carried a gnawing certainty. Savannah wasn't done. Then came the call that changed everything. It was a Tuesday morning, gray and drizzling. Gabriel's assistant handed Lily a phone. "Someone insists on speaking to you. She says it's about Savannah." Lily hesitated, her pulse quickening. "Who?" A quiet, nervous voice came through the line. "My name is Claire. I used to work for Savannah. Please, you don't know me, but I know you, and I know what she's planning." Lily's breath caught. "Why are you calling me?" "Because I can't watch her destroy another life. Not again." They met in a small cafe in Brooklyn, far from the glitter of Manhattan. Claire was younger than Lily expected, barely 30, with tired eyes that spoke of years of secrets. She stirred her coffee without drinking it, her hands trembling. "She used me," Claire began. "I managed her accounts, her fake charities, her payoffs. I saw everything. After London, she promised it would be different here. But it's worse. She's desperate, and desperate people are dangerous." Lily leaned forward. "Did she send those men to my apartment?" Claire's lips pressed tight, then she nodded. "Yes, and she won't stop. She told them to leave a mark, to make you fear her. She thinks if you disappear, her past will vanish too." The words chilled Lily, but they also ignited her anger. "Why are you telling me this now?" Claire's eyes glistened. "Because I used to believe her. I thought she was powerful, untouchable. But I watched what she did to you, how she smiled while planning your death with Ryan. I can't carry that guilt anymore. I want out. And you're the only one strong enough to bring her down." From her bag, Claire slid a flash drive across the table. "These are her files. Emails, transfers, recordings. Enough to prove everything. If you use this, she's finished." Lily stared at the small piece of plastic. It was the kind of evidence survivors dreamed of, proof that couldn't be silenced. But it also came with risk. Claire's eyes darted nervously around the cafe. "If she finds out I gave this to you, she'll come for me too." Lily placed her hand gently over Claire's. "Then you're not alone anymore. She can't scare us into silence. Not me, not you." For the first time, Claire smiled faintly, relief softening her face. As they left the cafe, Lily felt the weight in her pocket, the flash drive, heavy with truth. For years, Savannah had worn her mask, but now cracks had become fractures. And with this unexpected ally, Lily finally held the weapon to shatter Savannah's empire once and for all. The flash drive sat on the table like a ticking bomb. Lily, Gabriel, and his legal team gathered in the quiet of his study, the storm outside rattling the windows. With a single click, the files opened, and Savannah's carefully built empire began to unravel before their eyes. Emails scrolled across the screen, cold, calculated instructions, payments to hired men, transfers disguised as charity donations, wire receipts showing money siphoned from London to New York, and worst of all, recordings. The first voice was unmistakable, Savannah's, smooth, commanding, dripping with cruelty. "She's weak, terrified. A rope once didn't finish her, but fear will. Keep the pressure on. I want her broken." Lily's stomach twisted, but she forced herself to keep watching. The truth, no matter how painful, was her weapon. Another recording played, Savannah whispering to Ryan months earlier. "If she's gone, no one will question it. You'll get the payout. I'll clean the rest. Together, we'll be untouchable." The room fell silent. Gabriel's lawyer leaned back, stunned. "This isn't just evidence. This is her confession. With this, the authorities can dismantle everything she's touched." But Lily wasn't satisfied with private victories. Savannah had humiliated her in public, stripped her dignity, and nearly cost her life. Now Lily knew the only fitting end was for Savannah's mask to be torn off before the same kind of audience she once charmed. A plan was set. Gabriel's Foundation was hosting another high-profile charity gala, this time broadcasted live. It would be the perfect stage. The night of the event, Savannah arrived in glittering silver, her smile polished, her mask seemingly intact. She floated through the crowd, shaking hands, whispering her rehearsed lines. To the guests, she was a woman of influence. To Lily, she was a snake slithering through borrowed glamour. When the speeches began, Gabriel took the stage. His tone was steady, his words deliberate. Tonight, we honor survivors. But survival also means exposing the predators who hide among us. He gestured toward the screens behind him. One by one, Savannah's emails appeared. Her payments, her schemes, her cruel words. Gasps echoed through the ballroom. Cameras zoomed in on her face, catching the flicker of panic as she tried to maintain composure. "No, these are fabricated," she shouted, her voice cracking. "This is slander." But then the recording played, her own voice filling the hall. "She's weak. Terrified. A rope once didn't finish her, but fear will." The crowd erupted. Some turned away in disgust. Others filmed the spectacle, broadcasting her downfall across social media. Savannah's mask shattered in real time, her once perfect reputation collapsing into ash. Security moved in. Police followed. The evidence had already been shared with investigators, but now the entire city had witnessed it. Savannah Blake Cole was no longer a queen of elegance. She was a criminal exposed. Lily stood at the edge of the stage, her baby in her arms, watching as Savannah was led away in handcuffs. Their eyes met one last time, Savannah's glare filled with venom, Lily's gaze steady and unbroken. The woman who once tried to erase her had been unmasked, and the whole world had seen the betrayal unveiled. Savannah's arrest made headlines across both continents. Her face, once gracing magazine covers, now appeared on every news broadcast under the bold word criminal. For the world, it was the end of her reign. For Lily, it felt like vindication at last. But for Ryan, locked in his cell across the ocean, it was gasoline on the fire of his rage. The news reached him within hours. Other inmates taunted him, shoving tabloids into his face. "Your queen is gone, Cole," one jeered. Ryan's hands clenched into fists, his pride burning hotter than any punishment the court could deliver. Savannah had betrayed him, exposed him, and yet somehow he still blamed Lily. In a desperate move, Ryan reached out from prison. He began sending letters, angry, venomous letters written in his jagged scrawl. The first arrived at Gabriel's office. "You think you've won? She's mine, always mine. You can't erase me." Security intercepted it, but the message was clear. Ryan wasn't finished. Then came whispers from contacts in London. Ryan had pooled what remained of his influence, calling in favors with old gambling associates and shady businessmen. Even behind bars, he orchestrated a counterattack, pushing to paint himself as the victim. He claimed Lily was a manipulator who lied to destroy him. He even hinted that Gabriel had staged the evidence to eliminate rivals. Some tabloids picked up the story, splashing headlines like, "Is the survivor telling the whole truth?" For Lily, it was déjà vu. The same cruel whispers, the same humiliation, but this time amplified across continents. She held her baby close, reading the headlines with shaking hands. Gabriel stood firm. "This is his last weapon, Lily. Lies. If we stay silent, the truth will bury him. If we panic, we give him power." But silence was never Lily's strength anymore. She went on television herself, sitting under the bright studio lights with her baby in her lap. Calm, steady, she looked into the camera and said, "Ryan can write as many letters as he wants, but I lived through his violence. I carry the scars he left. I buried the child he cost me. His words can't erase the truth, because I am still here." The interview went viral. Survivors around the world shared it, flooding social media with messages of support. Ryan's lies drowned in the tidal wave of voices rising with Lily's. Meanwhile, Savannah, awaiting trial in America, tried one final desperate move. Through her lawyers, she threatened to expose secrets about Gabriel, hoping to drag him down alongside her. But Claire, the former assistant, stepped forward again, testifying under oath that Savannah had fabricated every claim. Savannah's credibility shattered completely. Cornered, stripped of power, both Ryan and Savannah raged like wounded animals. Their counterattack had failed, but their desperation made them more unpredictable than ever. Lily stood on her balcony one night, the city lights glowing below. She whispered to the night, "You tried to destroy me with fear, but fear no longer lives here." Ryan and Savannah had played their final cards, but in their desperation, they had only tightened the chains of their own downfall. The counterattacks had failed, but Lily and Gabriel knew better than to underestimate their enemies. Ryan's rage behind prison walls and Savannah's venom in court were dangerous enough. What made them deadly was desperation. Desperate people took reckless risks, and reckless risks could still shatter lives. So, instead of waiting for the next strike, Lily and Gabriel decided it was time to end this once and for all. No more running, no more defense. They would set the trap themselves. The plan began with Gabriel's influence. His foundation announced an international summit on justice and survivor advocacy, to be hosted in New York and broadcast worldwide. It promised to gather leaders, activists, and survivors in one place. But hidden beneath the polished speeches and glittering lights was a quieter purpose: to flush out the last remnants of Savannah's network. Claire, the former assistant who had turned ally, played a key role. She agreed to communicate with Savannah's remaining contacts, feeding them carefully crafted information. Lily will be there. Vulnerable. Surrounded by cameras but easy to reach backstage, she whispered into phone calls that were all being recorded. Every word was bait. Days before the summit, Gabriel's team picked up chatter. Savannah, still on bail but monitored, had reached out to her old associates. The trap was working. They thought this would be their chance to humiliate Lily, maybe even silence her once and for all. The night of the event arrived. Lily stood backstage, her gown elegant yet strong, her baby safe at home under heavy guard. Her heart pounded, but not with fear. This time it was anticipation. She knew the danger was real, but she also knew she wasn't alone. As speeches began, guests applauded, cameras flashed, and the world watched. In the shadows, two men tried to slip into restricted areas. They carried forged passes, their movements caught on hidden cameras. Lily spotted them from backstage monitors. For a moment, her breath caught, memories of masked intruders flooding back. But then she steadied herself. This wasn't the past repeating, this was the trap closing. Security swept in, quiet but swift. The men were restrained, their pockets full of Savannah's instructions, handwritten notes promising payment for a job done right. Within minutes, police led them out in handcuffs. The entire attempt had been caught on camera, proof of Savannah's continuing crimes. When it was Lily's turn to step on stage, she didn't waver. Looking out at the packed audience, she said clearly, "Tonight was supposed to be about justice, and it still is. Because justice isn't only found in courts, it's found when we refuse to live in fear. Some tried to silence me again tonight, but fear no longer rules my life." The crowd rose to their feet, applause thunderous, cameras capturing her words live across the world. And in that moment, Savannah's last threads of power unraveled completely. The trap had been set, the net had closed, and for the first time, Lily felt the weight of her enemies finally breaking beneath the truth. Savannah had always believed she was untouchable. She thought beauty could shield her, that charm could confuse, and that lies could bury the truth. For years, it had worked. She had walked through rooms with her head high, her lips curved into a practiced smile, and the world bowed to her image. But when the trap snapped shut at the summit, her mask finally shattered beyond repair. The men she had hired were caught on live cameras. The notes in their pockets, the recordings from Claire, the bank transfers, all of it tied directly back to Savannah. The prosecution barely needed to lift a finger. The evidence spoke for itself. Her trial became one of the most watched in America. Every day, reporters filled the courthouse steps, their microphones chasing headlines. "The Mistress of Deceit," one paper called her. "From diamonds to dirt," another sneered. The glamorous gowns were gone. Savannah now wore prison beige, her fiery hair pulled back, her eyes hollowed by sleepless nights. Inside the courtroom, Lily sat quietly with Gabriel at her side. She didn't gloat, she didn't need to. Just being present was enough. Each time Savannah's gaze darted toward her, Lily met it with calm steadiness. No fear, no trembling, only strength. Witness after witness took the stand. Claire testified with shaking hands but unflinching honesty, revealing how Savannah had manipulated, stolen, and orchestrated violence. Financial experts unraveled the maze of her fake charities. Security footage showed the failed attack at the summit. Piece by piece, Savannah's empire collapsed under the weight of its own rot. The defense tried desperately to paint her as a victim of Ryan, as a woman led astray by a violent man. But the recordings betrayed her. Her own voice ordering pressure, mocking Lily, calculating payments. There was no escape. On the final day, the courtroom buzzed as the judge prepared to deliver the sentence. Savannah stood, her once proud shoulders now slumped, but her chin still tilted, as if pride were the only thing left to cling to. "Savannah Blake Cole," the judge said sternly, "you stand convicted of conspiracy, fraud, and attempted homicide. For your actions, this court sentences you to 25 years in federal prison, with no chance of parole for the first 15. Gasps rippled through the room. Savannah's mouth parted, her face draining of color. For the first time, true fear flickered in her eyes. Lily closed her eyes, a tear slipping free, not of sadness, but of release. The rope around her neck, the years of humiliation, the threats against her child, all of it found its answer in that single moment of justice. As guards led Savannah away in handcuffs, reporters shouted questions. She ignored them, her mask finally gone. The once gilded woman who thought she could control fate had fallen, her power stripped, her future sealed behind bars. Outside the courthouse, cameras turned toward Lily. She held her baby in her arms, Gabriel's hand steady on her shoulder. She spoke softly, but her words carried. "This isn't just my victory. It's for every woman who has been silenced, every mother who has been threatened, every survivor who thought justice would never come. Tonight, justice has spoken." Savannah's fall was complete, but for Lily, it was only the beginning of a life rebuilt in strength and light. While Savannah's empire crumbled in New York, Ryan Cole sat rotting inside a London prison, convinced he still had one last chance. His arrogance had always been his fuel, and even behind bars, he clung to it like a drowning man clutching driftwood. He filed appeals, bribed guards, sent venomous letters. He told himself the courts were wrong, that Lily was weak, that Savannah had betrayed him. But when news of Savannah's conviction reached him, his world shattered. The woman he once claimed as his partner had stood on her own 2 feet and left him to rot. She had tried to save herself, but her own greed had destroyed her. For Ryan, there was no one left to manipulate, no one left to blame but himself. The prison walls began to close in on him. Inmates jeered when his name appeared in tabloids. "That's the guy who tried to hang his pregnant fiancée," they sneered. "Some man you are." He lashed out, fists flying, but every fight only made him look weaker. His pride was his prison long before the bars. The final blow came when the court rejected his last appeal. Judges read the dashcam footage, the rope evidence, the insurance policy, the testimonies. Every lie he told was crushed under the weight of undeniable proof. "Your sentence of life imprisonment stands," the court declared. Ryan erupted in rage, shouting, "It was her fault. She ruined me. She ruined everything." His voice cracked, hollow, echoing through the courtroom like the last scream of a man who finally realized no one believed him anymore. Meanwhile, Lily watched the news of his failed appeal from her apartment in New York. She held her baby close, her expression calm. She didn't smile, didn't gloat. Justice wasn't about revenge, it was about closure. She whispered softly, "You will never hurt us again." But Ryan's reckoning wasn't just legal, it was personal. For years he had built his life on control, on the illusion of power. Now he was powerless, forgotten, and despised. His gambling debts remained unpaid, his so-called friends vanished. He had no wealth, no family, no freedom. The man who once strutted through life believing himself untouchable was reduced to a number in a gray jumpsuit, eating cold meals off a metal tray. Nights in his cell were filled with silence, broken only by his own bitterness. He had dreamed of fortune, of escaping responsibility, but his greed had left him empty. And then, the cruelest twist of all, Savannah never wrote him. Not once. The woman he betrayed Lily for, the woman he nearly killed for, abandoned him entirely. In his darkest hours, Ryan discovered what he had refused to see all along. He had thrown away love for nothing. Back in New York, Lily stood on a balcony with Gabriel and their child, the city lights glowing around them. Ryan's reckoning was complete, his fate sealed forever. She whispered, almost to herself, "The rope that nearly ended me has finally closed around him." Ryan Cole's story was over, not with triumph, but with silence, shame, and a prison cell that would be his cage for the rest of his life. For the first time in years, Lily woke up without dread in her chest. The nightmares had begun to fade, replaced by mornings filled with soft light spilling through the curtains and the gentle cooing of her baby. The shadows of Ryan and Savannah no longer followed her into every room. Justice had spoken, and with it came something she once believed impossible: peace. Healing, however, wasn't instant. It came slowly, like dawn after a long storm. At first, Lily struggled to believe the danger was truly gone. She still checked the locks twice before bed. She still jolted awake at unfamiliar sounds. But with each passing day, the grip of fear loosened. Her son became her greatest medicine. His laughter filled the apartment, echoing through every room. His tiny hands reached for her, tugging her back into the present whenever old memories tried to pull her under. She found herself smiling more, singing lullabies without tears in her throat, enjoying small moments she once overlooked, warm bottles, bedtime stories, morning cuddles. Gabriel stood beside her through every step, not as her rescuer, but as her partner. He never tried to erase her scars. Instead, he reminded her they were proof of her survival. "You don't have to forget to heal," he told her one evening as they watched their son sleep. "You just have to remember that you're stronger than what tried to break you." Together, they began building a new chapter. Lily poured her heart into the Rainlight Foundation, turning her pain into purpose. She visited shelters, speaking softly to women who sat with bruised arms and broken spirits. She told them, "I know how it feels to think there's no way out, but there is. You deserve safety. You deserve love. You deserve to live." Every time she spoke, she saw hope flicker in their eyes, and in helping others, Lily found her own wounds closing. Her relationship with Gabriel deepened as well. Their love wasn't built on drama or desperation. It was steady, patient, rooted in respect. He admired her resilience. She admired his faith in her. When he proposed formally, it wasn't in front of cameras or crowds. It was a quiet evening at home, their baby asleep in the next room, as he slipped a ring onto her finger and said, "You're my strength as much as I am yours." Tears streamed down her face as she whispered yes. The healing also meant forgiveness, not for Ryan or Savannah, but for herself. For the years she blamed herself for staying, for believing lies, for losing her first child. One morning she wrote a final letter in the journal she kept for her unborn baby. "You saved me. You gave me the courage to fight. I will honor you by living fully, by loving fearlessly, and by protecting the brother who now carries your light." She closed the journal and felt something release inside her. The scars remained, but they no longer defined her. Lily was no longer just a survivor. She was a mother, a leader, and a woman reborn in the light of healing. Seasons passed, and with them came a sense of renewal Lily had never thought she would feel. Spring painted New York in blossoms, summer filled the parks with laughter, autumn covered the streets in golden leaves, and winter wrapped the city in quiet snow. Through it all, Lily and Gabriel built a life rooted not in fear, but in peace and promise. Their home no longer felt like a fortress under siege. It was a place alive with warmth. The walls that once echoed with sobs and fear now carried the sound of a baby's giggles, the soft strum of lullabies, and the easy rhythm of love. Every corner bore signs of family: tiny shoes lined by the door, finger-painted drawings taped proudly to the fridge, bedtime storybooks scattered across the couch. Gabriel thrived not only as a protector, but as a father. He was patient with midnight feedings, silly during playtime, and steadfast when Lily needed reassurance. Watching him cradle their child, Lily often felt tears sting her eyes, not from sadness, but from gratitude. She had once begged Ryan to be this kind of man, only to be met with cruelty. Now she no longer had to beg. Love had come freely, gently, fully. The Rainlight Foundation grew beyond anything Lily imagined. What began as a few small support groups expanded into a nationwide network of shelters, legal aid, and counseling centers. Survivors found not only safety, but also dignity. Lily, once a woman silenced by shame, now stood proudly as its co-founder. She spoke at universities, conferences, and community halls. Each word carried the weight of her journey, and every story she told became a light for someone lost in darkness. But her happiest moments were the quiet ones. Sunday mornings making pancakes with Gabriel, her child perched on the counter laughing at the mess. Evening walks where the city lights shimmered on the Hudson, her hand safe in Gabriel's. Nights when they sat on the balcony, stars above them, and Lily whispered, "I never thought life could feel this gentle." Gabriel would always answer, "That's because you've earned every piece of it." The past wasn't erased. It still lived in her scars, in her memories, in the journal she kept tucked safely away. But it no longer held power over her. She had reclaimed her life, her dignity, and her future. And in choosing to move forward, she honored the child she lost, while giving everything to the child she now held. One evening, as they celebrated their anniversary, Gabriel raised a glass and looked at her with unwavering devotion. "We didn't just survive, Lily. We built something better than survival. We built a beginning." Lily smiled, her son's laughter echoing in the background. "Yes," she whispered, "a new beginning." The woman who once hung from a rope in the rain now stood in the sunlight of love, family, and freedom, her new beginning shining brighter than any shadow of the past. Years later, Lily's life looked nothing like the nightmare she once endured. Time had softened the edges of her pain, though the scars remained as quiet reminders. Her son grew tall and strong, his laughter filling their home with the very music she once thought she would never hear. Gabriel's love remained steady, their family thriving in peace. But Lily's story didn't end with her happiness. It became a legacy that reached far beyond her own walls. The Rainlight Foundation had blossomed into an international force. Shelters bore her name, not as a symbol of tragedy, but of survival. Women in London, New York, and beyond whispered her story in safe rooms, finding courage in her resilience. She visited often, her presence soft yet commanding, hugging survivors, listening to their voices, and telling them the words that had saved her. "You are not broken, you are still here, and that means you are powerful." Universities invited her to speak. Lawmakers quoted her testimony when drafting stronger protections for women and children. News outlets called her the woman who defied the rope. But Lily never let the spotlight consume her. She always said the same thing: "I'm not extraordinary. I'm proof that even in the darkest rain, light can still break through." Her son, old enough now to understand pieces of her past, once asked her, "Mom, why do people call you a hero?" She knelt beside him, brushing his hair gently. "Because I didn't give up when it was hardest," she answered. "And because I chose to fight, not just for me, but for others too. One day you'll choose what you'll fight for. That's what makes a hero." He hugged her tightly, and in that embrace, Lily felt the true victory of her life. As for Ryan and Savannah, their names faded into history as cautionary tales. He remained behind prison walls, forgotten by the world he once tried to control. She served her time in silence, her beauty and power long stripped away. Neither of them would know freedom the way Lily did. Their punishment wasn't only in years lost, but in the emptiness of lives wasted. On the anniversary of her survival, Gabriel organized a gathering. Survivors, advocates, and supporters filled the room. Lily stood on stage, her son and husband in the front row, her voice carrying with quiet strength. "I was once a woman who believed fear was stronger than me. I was wrong. Fear does not win when we speak, when we stand, when we refuse to break. My story is not about pain, it's about hope, and hope is what I want to leave behind." The audience rose to their feet, applause thunderous, some wiping away tears. In that moment, Lily realized her journey had come full circle. From a thorn tree drenched in rain to a stage filled with light, she had not only survived, she had built a legacy. And that legacy was clear. No rope, no storm, no betrayal could ever silence a woman who chose to rise. So my friend, the story has finally reached its close. And if you're still here with me until this very moment, that means something inside this journey touched your heart in a way words alone cannot explain. What Lily's story shows us is simple yet powerful. No matter how dark the storm, there's always a chance for light to break through. The Stoics remind us, we suffer more in imagination than in reality, meaning fear loses its grip once we face it. Healing, love, and courage can turn even scars into strength. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, because together we remind each other, you are stronger than the storm.